The sun rose over Adam, painting the sky in shades of gold and fire. It woke a village nestled in a valley so green it seemed to glow. The air hummed with the buzz of bees and the sweet smell of ripe mangoes and rich, dark earth. Here, the soil was not just dirt, it was the heart of the people. For generations, the villagers had lived by the rhythms of planting and harvest. Their lives were woven together like the strong fibers of a palm frond basket. Children played near the river, women pounded yam in large mortars, and the sound of their laughter and talk mixed with the crowing of roosters. Adam was a land blessed by the ancestors, a place of abundance and peace. In the largest field, a young man named Jabari was already at work. His hands, though young, were calloused and wise. He did not just plant seeds, he listened. He would press his palm flat against the soil and close his eyes, feeling its thirst. He could sense when the rains were coming by the way the wind whispered through the tall elephant grass. The ground is hungry today, he would tell his father. We must bring more water. The villagers would watch him and nod with respect. Jabari does not farm the land, the elders would say. He speaks with it. He is its guardian. His brother, Kofi, was different. He stood at the edge of that same field, but his eyes were not on the crops. They were fixed on the dusty road that snaked out of the village and disappeared over the horizon. He kicked a stone, watching it bounce into the distance. Why do you stare at the dirt, brother? Kofi asked, his voice tight. There is a whole world out there. A world of shining cars and buildings that touch the clouds. Money that can buy anything. Jabari looked up, his face calm. This dirt is our life, Kofi. It is our history. What could be more important than that? Everything. Kofi exclaimed, throwing his arms wide. Everything is more important than this. We break our backs for a handful of seeds while others live in palaces. Their mother, Mama Abibi, heard them from the shade of her cooking hut. She was a tall woman, her hair a crown of silver, her face lined with wisdom and love. She was the village's storyteller, the keeper of their history. But lately, a deep worry had settled in her eyes. She watched her two sons, one rooted like a strong baobab tree, the other restless as a storm wind, and her heart felt heavy. The gap between them was growing, and she feared what it would bring. That fear grew sharp the day their father grew ill. The village fell quiet. The joyful sounds were replaced by a sad silence. The great farmer, their father, was leaving them. The whole village gathered at his bedside. His breathing was shallow. He looked at his two sons, his eyes cloudy but full of love. My sons, he whispered, his voice a dry leaf. I leave you my greatest treasures. This land, it is our family's soul. Care for it. He pointed a trembling finger to a simple, aged calabash sitting on a stool. It was etched with ancient symbols that told the story of their family. And these, the seeds of our ancestors. They hold our past and our future. They will provide, but only if you work this land together. Only in harmony. Promise me. Jabari took his father's hand, tears in his eyes. I promise, Baba. Kofi nodded quickly, his eyes darting to the calabash. Yes, father. I promise. With a final, soft sigh, their father was gone. The village mourned. They wore clothes of faded brown and sang sad songs that floated over the fields. On the day of the burial, the sun was hidden behind gray clouds. Mama Abibi held the sacred calabash, ready to place it in the ground as an offering to the ancestors. But as she lifted the lid, a powerful, unexpected wind roared through the ceremony. It was a wild, angry gust that tore at clothes and sent dust flying. It snatched the precious seeds from the gourd, scattering them into the air like a shower of brown dust. A gasp went through the crowd. Without a moment's thought, Jabari dropped to his knees. He ignored the sharp stones that dug into his skin. His eyes were only on the seeds. Gently, carefully, as if each one were a tiny, sleeping child, he began to gather them. One by one, he picked them up, his touch full of reverence. Kofi, help me, he called out. Kofi, startled by the sudden wind, took a step forward. He bent down and clumsily grabbed at a few seeds, but his movements were rushed and careless. His head was still full of the wind's roar, and his mind was elsewhere, on the noise of a world far away, on the promise of a different life. He quickly gave up, standing and brushing the dirt from his knees, watching his brother work. Mama Abibi stood frozen. She did not watch the swirling dust or the morning crowd. She watched her sons. She saw Jabari's loving care. She saw Kofi's distraction, his half-hearted effort, his mind already gone from this sacred place. Her heart sank like a stone in a deep river. She knew this was a sign. A terrible omen of a struggle to come. The path ahead for her family would be fraught with pain, and she felt a fearful prophecy form in her soul. The seeds of discord had been sown. The peace of Adam was shattered one afternoon by a sound it had never heard before, the loud, angry growl of a car engine. A vehicle as red and shiny as a poisonous berry kicked up dust as it rolled into the village center. Children stopped their games and stared. Adults peeked from their huts, their faces a mix of curiosity and worry. The man who stepped out was named Mr. Bull. His shoes were so polished they reflected the sun, and his suit was tight around his belly. He smiled a wide, white smile that did not reach his eyes. Progress has come to Adam, he announced, his voice too loud for the quiet village. He asked to see the owners of the finest plot of land, and soon he was standing before Jabari and Kofi. He looked at their field with a greedy glint, not seeing its life, only its location. "I will make you rich," he said simply. He opened a leather bag. Inside were stacks of money, more than the brothers had ever imagined. "This is just a taste. Sell me this land, and this wealth is yours. I will build a factory here. You will be kings." Jabari took a step back as if the money were a snake. "This land is not for sale. It is our blood. It is our father's soul. You cannot put a price on that." But Kofi could not look away from the cash. His eyes were wide, his breath quick. He saw a future in that bag, a fast car, fine clothes, freedom from the dirt. "Jabari, think. With this, we could have anything." "We already have everything we need right here," Jabari replied, his voice firm but sad. Later, under the great baobab tree that had witnessed generations of their family, the brothers fought. "You are a fool," Kofi shouted, his voice cracking with anger. "You choose dirt over your own brother. You would have us break our backs forever while the world passes us by." Jabari's heart ached. "Kofi, this dirt is our heritage. Our ancestors are in this soil. Their wisdom grows in these crops. This is our duty, our purpose. That money is a poison. It will destroy us. Your purpose is to be a poor farmer. Not mine." Kofi spat the words. The crack between them had become a canyon. That night, Kofi went to the village chief's hut. The chief was an older man who had always spoken of tradition, but his eyes also lingered on new, shiny things. "Chief," Kofi whispered in the dark. "Help me with the papers for the land. Say I am the only owner. When the money comes, a large share will be yours. We can both escape this place." The chief hesitated, looking at the spirit staff in the corner. Then he looked at Kofi's desperate, eager face and nodded slowly. Greed had corrupted the village's leadership. Alone by the light of a single kerosene lamp, Kofi took out the old papers his father had left. His hand shook as he began to write. He carefully changed the words, making it seem that he alone owned the land. Each stroke of the pen felt like a cut, severing the bond to his brother, to his father, to his very own blood. It was a quiet, violent betrayal. He then walked to the family shrine. The ancient calabash sat in its place of honor. He picked it up. It felt warm, almost alive, in his hands. For a moment, he remembered his father's words. Then he shook his head. "It is just an old gourd," he muttered to himself. "Some city collector will pay much money for something this ancient." He handled it carelessly, tossing it into a sack, seeing a price tag where his family saw its heart. The next day, Mr. Bull returned. Kofi met him with the forged papers. "I am the sole owner," he said, his voice lacking the confidence he hoped for. "Good man." Mr. Bull boomed. He handed over a heavy, full of cash. Kofi took it. The weight of the money pulled his arm down, but the weight of what he had done made his soul feel empty and light, like a feather lost in the wind. With the chief standing stiffly beside him, Kofi walked to the field where Jabari was working. His brother looked up, smiling, his face covered in healthy sweat. "Kofi. Come, help me with these seedlings. They are strong this season." Kofi could not meet his eyes. "Jabari, you have to go. This is my land now. The papers say so. You are no longer welcome here." Jabari's smile faded. The hoe slipped from his hand. The words did not make sense. "Kofi. What are you saying? This is our land. Our father's land." "I sold it," Kofi said, his voice flat. "Now leave." The shock on Jabari's face turned to a pain so deep it was physical. He stumbled back. He looked at the chief, who looked at the ground. He looked at his brother, who stared at the bag of money in his hands. The betrayal was a knife to his heart. He was being evicted from his own soul. As Jabari gathered the few things he could call his own, his mother approached. Tears streamed down her wise face. She took his hand and pressed a single, small, unassuming seed into his palm. It was dry and wrinkled. "My son," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Where you plant this with a pure heart, your roots will find water. Do not forget who you are." Jabari closed his fingers around the seed. It was the only thing he had left. Faith. He turned and walked. He did not look back at the field, at the village, at his brother. He walked past the silent, watching villagers, their heads bowed in shame and sadness. He walked down the dusty road and towards the harsh, unforgiving barren plains, alone. That night, in a city that screamed with noise and light, Kofi tried to celebrate. He was in a nightclub, surrounded by people. He bought expensive drinks for everyone. The music was loud, but it was a hollow sound. The people laughed, but they laughed at his money, not with him. He sat in the middle of the crowd, the bag of cash on the table, and felt a loneliness colder than any night in the village. He had everything he thought he wanted, and he had nothing at all. The true cost of his betrayal was just beginning to dawn on him. Jabari walked until the green of Adam was a memory. The world around him turned harsh and yellow. The sun beat down on the barren plains without mercy, and the wind blew hot dust that stung his eyes. His feet were sore, his water was almost gone, and his heart felt as dry and cracked as the earth beneath his feet. He carried nothing but the clothes on his back and the heavy weight of his brother's betrayal. In his pocket, he felt the small, hard shape of his mother's seed, his only piece of hope. Full of cash. Kofi took it. The weight of the money pulled his arm down, but the weight of what he had done made his soul feel empty and light, like a feather lost in the wind. With the chief standing stiffly beside him, Kofi walked to the field where Jabari was working. His brother looked up, smiling, his face covered in healthy sweat. "Kofi. Come, help me with these seedlings. They are strong this season." Kofi could not meet his eyes. "Jabari, you have to go. This is my land now. The papers say so. You are no longer welcome here." Jabari's smile faded. The hoe slipped from his hand. The words did not make sense. "Kofi. What are you saying? This is our land. Our father's land." "I sold it," Kofi said, his voice flat. "Now leave." The shock on Jabari's face turned to a pain so deep it was physical. He stumbled back. He looked at the chief, who looked at the ground. He looked at his brother, who stared at the bag of money in his hands. The betrayal was a knife to his heart. He was being evicted from his own soul. As Jabari gathered the few things he could call his own, his mother approached. Tears streamed down her wise face. She took his hand and pressed a single, small, unassuming seed into his palm. It was dry and wrinkled. "My son," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Where you plant this with a pure heart, your roots will find water. Do not forget who you are." Jabari closed his fingers around the seed. It was the only thing he had left. Faith. He turned and walked. He did not look back at the field, at the village, at his brother. He walked past the silent, watching villagers, their heads bowed in shame and sadness. He walked down the dusty road and towards the harsh, unforgiving barren plains, alone. That night, in a city that screamed with noise and light, Kofi tried to celebrate. He was in a nightclub, surrounded by people. He bought expensive drinks for everyone. The music was loud, but it was a hollow sound. The people laughed, but they laughed at his money, not with him. He sat in the middle of the crowd, the bag of cash on the table, and felt a loneliness colder than any night in the village. He had everything he thought he wanted, and he had nothing at all. The true cost of his betrayal was just beginning to dawn on him. Jabari walked until the green of Adam was a memory. The world around him turned harsh and yellow. The sun beat down on the barren plains without mercy, and the wind blew hot dust that stung his eyes. His feet were sore, his water was almost gone, and his heart felt as dry and cracked as the earth beneath his feet. He carried nothing but the clothes on his back and the heavy weight of his brother's betrayal. In his pocket, he felt the small, hard shape of his mother's seed, his only piece of hope. Now truly alone, with no money and no friends, a new sickness found Kofi. It was not like the worker's fever. His skin became dry and flaky, like parched earth. His strength faded, leaving him too weak to often leave his hut. The village healer came, looked into his eyes, and sighed deeply. "This illness is not in your body, Kofi," the old woman said sadly. "It is in your spirit. Your soul is withering because you have cut yourself off from your roots. You are dying from the inside out. Weeks later, a trader traveling through the barren plains stumbled upon Jabari's oasis. He was given water and food, and in return, he shared news. It is terrible in Adam, the trader said, shaking his head. The land is sick. The people are sad. And the young man who sold the land. Kofi, he is dying of a strange illness. They say his body is as barren as the field he sold. Jabari's heart clenched. The old pain of betrayal warred with a deep, stubborn love for his brother. He knew what he had to do. He returned to Adam. The village was quiet and felt empty. He went to his old family hut. Inside, it was dark and smelled of sickness. On a thin mat on the floor lay Kofi. He was so thin, his skin stretched over his bones. He looked like a ghost of the proud, restless brother Jabari had known. Kofi's eyes fluttered open. When he saw Jabari, he did not see anger or hate. He saw only sadness. A sob escaped Kofi's cracked lips. Jabari, he croaked. I am so sorry. I did it all. The words poured out of him in a feverish rush, full of tears and shame. He confessed everything, the forged papers, the bribe to the chief, the stolen calabash he sold for a handful of coins. The money is gone. Everything is gone. I do not ask for your help, brother. I only ask, can you ever forgive me? My soul is so heavy. I cannot carry it anymore. He was not begging for his life, he was begging for peace for his dying spirit. Jabari looked at his brother, so frail on the mat. He felt the old hurt, a sharp stone in his heart. But he also felt something else, a duty that was deeper than anger. Your sickness is not in your body, Kofi, Jabari said, his voice low and steady. It was not a voice of pity, but of stern love. It is in the choices you made. Healing will not come easy. It is a path you must walk yourself. It begins with truth, and it is paved with hard work. Are you ready to walk it? Kofi, his body weak but his spirit desperate, nodded. I will do anything. I am tired of the weight. Jabari helped his brother stand, supporting his thin frame. He led him out of the dark hut and into the village center. The people of Adam gathered slowly, their faces hard and unsure. They had been hurt by Kofi's greed. Kofi stood, shaking, leaning on Jabari for strength. He looked at the ground, unable to meet their eyes at first. Then, he took a ragged breath. People of Adam, he began, his voice a trembling whisper that grew stronger. I have wronged you. I lied. I let greed blind me. I betrayed my own blood and I sold our heritage for a bag of money that turned to dust. I am sorry. I ask for your forgiveness. A silence followed. Then, an old woman nodded slowly. It was a start. Next, Jabari took his brother to the field. It was a sad sight, hard, cracked, and scarred by the machines. Jabari picked up a heavy hoe and pressed the worn wooden handle into Kofi's weak hands. The land remembers the hurt, Jabari said. You must help it forget. Start here. Kofi's arms trembled as he lifted the hoe. It was terribly heavy. With a grunt of effort, he brought it down. It chipped a small piece of the hard earth. It was a tiny start, but it was the first honest work he had done in a long time. It was the first step back. From a small pouch at his side, Jabari brought out seeds. They were not like the seeds of Adam, they were smaller, with a faint silvery sheen. These are from my tree, he told Kofi. They grew in a place of pain, but they learned how to live. They hold a new beginning for us. Together, they made small holes in the earth Kofi had broken. Into each hole, Jabari placed a single, precious seed from his oasis. Each one was a piece of his journey, a gift of hope for their future. The days that followed were long and hard. The sun beat down on them as they worked. Kofi struggled, his body aching, his hands blistering. He often had to stop and rest. But he did not quit. As they worked, Jabari began to sing. It was the same old farming song their father had sung, a prayer to the ancestors and the earth. At first, Kofi just listened. Then, hesitantly, his weak voice joined his brother's. He was learning the sacred ways he had once laughed at and rejected. One afternoon, as Kofi was watering the tiny seedlings, his focus was entirely on them. He wasn't thinking of his own pain or his tired body. He was only thinking of giving the fragile plants life. He whispered a small prayer of his own. As if in answer, a single, cool drop of water fell on his cheek. Then another. He looked up. The sky, which had been a harsh blue for so long, was now soft with gray clouds. A gentle, soaking rain began to fall. It was the first rain Adam had felt since the betrayal. It washed the dust from the leaves and from the brothers' faces. It was a blessing. A sign that the ancestors had seen their work and accepted it. The rain nourished the hidden seeds. Soon, tiny green shoots pushed through the soil, reaching for the sun. At the same time, Kofi's terrible illness began to change. The wasting stopped. He still coughed, and he was still thin, but a little strength returned to his arms each day. His healing was slow, just like the land's, but it was real. One evening, Jabari called his brother and the villagers together. He held out the ancient calabash. He had found it, broken and discarded, and had carefully mended it with glue made from tree sap. It could hold water again. It was whole. "Look," Jabari said, holding it up for all to see. "It is fixed. It is useful again. But the cracks will always be there. They are a reminder of what was broken, and of the work it took to make it whole again." The people understood. They looked at the struggling green shoots in the field and at the two brothers working together. They saw that the wealth of a community was not in money, but in shared work, in forgiveness, and in living the right way with the land and with each other. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in colors of orange and purple, Jabari and Kofi sat together under the young, growing saplings. They did not talk much. They were not the same carefree brothers from before. Too much had happened. But they were together. Side by side. Their bond had been tested by fire and betrayal, and had been remade, stronger and more careful, by truth, hard work, and the slow, unwavering justice of time.